AskReddit by padded vowels. What is, by far, the most surreal event to have ever happened in history? The last prisoner of war from WWII returned home in 2000, nearly 60 years after the fighting ended. https://en.m.wiki.org/wiki/andr%c3%a1s_toma. Wow, Hungary did right by him in the end. On the 16th of September 2000, he returned to his hometown of Sulyanbaka, where he was reunited with his siblings. Since he was never discharged, Toma was promoted to Sergeant Major by the Minister of Defense, and since his military service had been continuous, his decades of accumulated unpaid salary were paid in full. Toma, then aged 74, moved in with his half-sister Anna, who cared for him until his death in 2004. He was buried with military honors. The Battle of the Eclipse, also known as the Battle of Hells, it took place in the early 6th century BC in Anatolia, present-day Turkey. It involved the Medes and the Lydians. The sudden darkness led both parties to halt the fighting and negotiate a peace agreement, ending a 6-year war. It's also one of the first dates in human history that is known for certain. The 28th of May 585 BC. Due to the eclipse. There are few earlier dates which are mostly known, but there is some uncertainty. Battle of Megiddo was probably on the 16th of April 1457 BC. Probably. Napoleon landing with 1,000 men in France and taking back control of the country in 3 weeks without a shot being fired. Napoleon's whole life was so surreal. If it had been an alternate history timeline, I would say it was implausible. The Christmas truce of 1914, in which soldiers came across the battle lines to sing and play football against each other. Or, more precisely, the way soldiers on both sides went back to fighting when Christmas was over. I wonder what the parting words were when the dinner was over. Well, I better get going. Got a busy day tomorrow shooting you guys. Not if I shoot you first. The night the stars fell, 1833. A meteor shower so intense fell over the southern United States that people thought the world was ending. Slave owners reportedly repented at the feet of their slaves, begging forgiveness for enslaving them. And then the next day, I suppose, went right back to normal. But the event was so memorable that it was used as a touchstone moment that slaves could use to estimate their age for decades. Up until the 1920, people could say I must have been 8 years old the night the stars fell, and thus historians could approximate their birth year. That is fascinating. Thanks for sharing this. A Serbian man sticking a bottle up his ass was a major contributing factor to the collapse of Yugoslavia and the subsequent years of war and genocide. Specifically, his blaming it on an attack by a gang of Albanians was a tipping point in allowing pent-up nationalist feelings in Yugoslavia to boil over and subsequently explode. What? Could you send a link of a video or explanation of this whole thing? The Great Molasses Flood in Boston in 1919. An enormous storage tank of molasses burst, 21 people were killed and 150 were injured. I call it the Molassacre. The dancing plague of 1518 is up there. What's funny is when you look it up it says somewhere between 50 and 400 people took to dancing for weeks. So, people were unable to get a smaller difference there, 50 people, or up to 400 lol. Hard to pinpoint one event, but I would say a candidate could be the Tunguska event of 1908. This incident involved a massive explosion in Siberia, believed to be caused by the airburst of a comet or meteoroid. It flattened an estimated 80 million trees over 2,150 square kilometers. Yet incredibly, it caused no confirmed human fatalities. The event's cause remained mysterious for decades, fueling various scientific and fantastical theories, making it a prime candidate for one of the most surreal events in human history due to its scale, mystery, and the dramatic visuals it must have produced. Imagine the chaos if it had hit a mere city. It's scary to think about. The escalation of the assassination of Franz Ferdinand from a manageable situation to World War I. I'm sure everyone in the region was unable to process it. My favorite fact about this is that the assassination squad had utterly failed. After the subsequent reception, his car took a wrong turn. The driver went to reverse and stalled right where Gavrilo Princip happened to be standing, who then stepped up onto the footboard and shot Franz at point blank range. Almost comedic. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/assassination_f_Franz Z_Ferdinand It's two things for me. The fact that there is more time between the first bronze weapons and the first steel weapons than there is between the first steel weapons and nuclear weapons, and that it took us thousands of years to figure out how to fly but less than 100 more to put a man on the moon. One of the Wright brothers lived long enough to see an airplane drop nukes on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We landed on the moon. That's pretty surreal to me. We landed on the moon, then said EHH. That's good enough and didn't go back for half a century. Four Seasons Landscaping. The employee who gladly tooled that reservation is a greater comedic genius than any comedy writer or stand-up comedian anywhere in the world. The us-faked vampire attacks in Asia. Say what? The Dave Matthews Band Chicago River Incident. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/Dave_Matthews_band_Chicago_River_incident On the 8th of August, 2004, a tour bus belonging to the Dave Matthews Band dumped an estimated 800 pounds, 360 kilograms, of human waste from the bus's black water tank through the Kinzie Street Bridge in Chicago onto an open-top passenger sightseeing boat sailing in the Chicago River below. I've heard about that incident multiple times, and I've read the Wikipedia article. It states that the band paid out $200,000 in a lawsuit for the city, and donated another few $100,000 to charities to keep the river safe. What I'm wondering is, did the people actually soaked in shit and piss get paid? A bunch of weak-ass apes becoming the most dominant species on Earth. Nerds. The Surrealists had an intervention when one of the founding members of the group wanted to try something different. As they became more famous, the group became more politically active and encouraged each other to create ever more controversial art to shock and offend the common folk. Most of the group were on board because these guys were the rockstars of the era and everybody likes being famous. Except for Alberto Giacometti, he just wanted to make sculptures of human figures, specifically the common folk they were supposed to be offending. So the group, led by Marcel Ducharme, decided to have it out with him and threatened to kick him out of the movement if he didn't straighten up and fly sideways with the rest of them. He told them to kick rocks and went on to create the work he's best known for. TLDR, a group based on pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable art set boundaries for what was acceptable art for the group. This guy took the most surreal event literally. The pace at which we as a human species have been able to harness technology after being hunters and gathering for some 100,000 years. We lived life as savages before modern machinery, toiling with the rocks and mud. The last 200 years or so have been the outlier. I have this weird idea of the time-traveling peasant. Like, how much different would the world be for a 5th century European peasant if they got time-traveled centuries into the future? Language and politics would change, but to some random dude who can't read and works in the field every single day, would they even notice? It's only when you get to the 15th 16th century when the printing press became more common is when the world starts to change a lot faster. The miracle of Dunkirk during World War II is one of those surreal moments in history. Hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers stranded on the beaches of Dunkirk, surrounded by enemy forces, yet through a remarkable combination of bravery, luck, and sheer determination, a flotilla of civilian boats managed to evacuate over 330,000 soldiers to safety. To add to the surreal nature of it, one of the men who went in his ship to help was the highest-ranking surviving officer of the Titanic, Charles Littler. https://en.m.wiki/sundowner_open bracket close bracket. The fact that we're able to comprehend abstract things. These ape people can paint or write. Think about love. Our brains are the universe comprehending itself. Probably the moon landing, or the first manned spaceflight. There is some debate if it happened the way it is described, but the banquet of chestnuts, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/banquet_of_chestnuts closed bracket is a wild story. Sometimes ballet of chestnuts, festival of chestnuts, or joust of whores. Well, that escalated quickly. A solar eclipse totality caused two battling armies to stop and make peace because they thought the eclipse was sent as a sign from the heavens telling them to stop. This may be stretching the definition of an event a bit, but the Cambrian explosion. It's the period where evolution was just kinda trying shit out and seeing what happened. The optimal numbers and configurations of limbs, sensory organs, and random appendages hadn't been worked out yet. I think the events regarding the 1561 Sky Battle of Nuremberg, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/1561_celestial_phenomenon_over_Nuremberg closed bracket really could be mass ergot concern, or amazing as UFO sightings go. Came here to look for this. This is really crazy.